Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The December 17th special meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission is now in session. Report of posting of agenda, please, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agenda was posted last week in accordance with state and local procedures.
Okay. Before we go along, would you like to give us a report concerning the need or the requirement of a closed session activity?
Mr. Chairman, you do have an agenda for a closed session item. The need for that closed session no longer exists. Staff does not see a need for it, although you do have it listed on your agenda for public comment, so you should open public comments, and then I'll report on the closed session at the end of public comments again.
Very good. This is the time for public comments concerning the closed session. Anybody wishing to address us concerning that matter, please come forward at this time. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll close the public comments with regard to closed session. And if you'd like to complete your report, Mr. Evans, please.
Mr. Chairman, there was not a closed session today. There's no report.
Thank you. We'll now reconvene in open session then. Now is the time for our normal public comments. Anybody wishing to address us on planning issues in the city of Palm Springs may come forward at this time. If you are here on our agended public hearing item, we would prefer that you withhold your comments until the public hearing item is called after 2 o'clock. But if anybody else would like to speak on other issues, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Our public hearing is noticed for 2 o'clock, so we will move down the agenda to item number 8, Commission Work Programs. Mr. Evans, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We don't have any reports on the work program this week.
Okay. How about number 9, City Council Actions Update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The City Council had a workshop study session last Wednesday evening. They did review the proposed swim center skate park project. They reviewed all the work that the commission is undertaken relative to reviewing the plans. We went through a complete report as to the issues. The city council did decide it wanted to have the decorative fence, which was the wavy fence to some degree. Design review and the commission had recommended we just match the existing fencing out there, which was very simple, straightforward vertical pickets. The council felt that that would be a nice upgrade, and when and if we need to go back in and fix the existing fencing, we'd take a look at that as a future project. The council also did spend quite a bit of time looking at the lighting program, and I'd just like to give the commission an update on a couple of items there. One is we did have to put in the project an alternative because of cost and be traditional floodlights that you would have around a ball field. That will be a bid item as an alternate. The council then would have a choice of picking that up. The shade canopy structure came in with the architect's budget way over budget. So there's some questions whether or not it can be done. We also got some last-minute engineering on those structures, and to make those structures work, they needed to put some posts in the middle of the skate park, which is equivalent to putting a post in the middle of a freeway. You can't do it. So we're hoping that they can re-engineer it, but there may be a possibility it goes to bid without the actual shade canopy, but the lighting still suspended. 80-mile-an-hour wind loads with those canopies and the tension that you needed to hold them just generated a need that there needed to be more support. So a couple of items changed literally during the meeting. Some of this was coming up during that meeting as far as staff's first update on some of the information, particularly the posts in the middle of the skate park. So the council seems to be comfortable. We're putting the balance of the plans together so we can take them forward for council approval of specifications and plans, and that would then start the bidding process where we'd go out to bid for the project. But overall, the skate park hasn't changed much. The swim center building was approved, and everything on the inside of the swim center was pretty much supported in the fashion the commission looked at. So an awful lot of work on behalf of the commission, and we appreciate it. City Council tomorrow evening will consider if the commission acts upon one item tonight or today that's on your agenda, the Agua Caliente Development Authority golf course project, general plan amendment, specific plan, that'll be on council tomorrow night, as well as some items that are not particularly commission-driven, one historic preservation item, and then we have another item from the planning staff going to council. Mr. Chairman, that completes my council report at this time.
Very good, thank you. Next item then is number 10, commission reports. Staff, would you care to go first?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, we're not going to have your regular meeting on December 25th. We expect there will not be a quorum that day, so we're going to cancel that meeting due to lack of quorum, not reschedule it for the following day, and then we've really rescheduled everything for the first meeting in January. I don't think we're going to inconvenience many people, and then we'll have a study session instead of the first week of January because I think we'll have a lack of quorum on January 1st, and we won't schedule it for January 2. We'll have a special study session on the 15th of January, recognizing that we've got a holiday period and we're probably going to have trouble getting quorum. We've got a lot of items for your January 15th study session. A lot of good information relative to community projects as well as new development projects. Mr. Chairman, that gives you an update from staff on commission staff reports and requests.
Thank you very much. Back to the commission. Any comments? Mr. Schoenberger.
Just a brief report on the development task force that I've been involved in. There was a meeting last night. Commissioners may recall that there had been several previous meetings dealing with the engineering department, the building department, and other aspects of the development process, and the meeting last night focused on planning, and there was a good crowd there, a number of contractors and engineers, and people from the city manager, his assistant. The only council person there was Chris Mills. Jeannie Reller Spurgeon had attended previous sessions. And the focus last night was on planning, and the comments were primarily generated towards the planning process at the staff level, and the idea of trying to facilitate approval of smaller projects that do not get into design review, do not get into the planning commission, that there be an effort made to approve those projects more expeditiously, perhaps offer people who come in with smaller projects greater assistance than they have been receiving, and most of the comments were focused in that area. There was not widespread or even much criticism of the design review process or the planning commission process, so I report that. The next step in this process will be drafting some recommendations that will not occur until the consultant that's been hired, Mr. Kaplan, finishes his review of all of these functions and renders his report, although there'll be a preliminary meeting to discuss recommendations early in January, probably prior to the completion of Mr. Kaplan's report, although the final recommendations will not be made by this group until Mr. Kaplan's report has been completed and taken into account in any recommendations that the task force might make. So it's been kind of an interesting process, and if anybody has any questions, otherwise I'll report again after we have our next meeting.
Very good, thanks, John. Do you get any feeling whether the commission can any way, other than your representation of us, any way that we can contribute, or is that even desirable?
Well, I don't know. As far as Mr. Kaplan is concerned, he did call my office and asked to meet with me on Thursday, and I was curious whether he had called any other planning commissioners at this point to meet with them. I don't know what he wants to meet about. Perhaps just my views on what's happening with this task force. But I may suggest at that meeting, if he wants to talk about the commission and how it functions, that maybe he'll want to talk to one or more of you folks as well, rather than just take my input on it. But I think it'll depend on what he wants to talk about at that meeting, and we'll just leave it at that until I have my meeting with him.
Great. Well, you have our confidence, so
Okay,
you
thanks.
carry on without. Anybody else? Okay, 2 o'clock is approaching. We do have a procedural matter to attend to before we go into the public hearing, and that has to do with resolving the issues of conflict of interest. Can you guide us through that, Mr. Evans, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is going to take a couple of minutes. Why don't you go ahead and read the item into the record?
Okay.
And we certainly won't start our staff report until after 2 o'clock. We'll take care of the procedural matter.
All right. So this is item number 4, case 5.0932A, application by Agua Caliente Development Authority for a general plan amendment to change the L2 designation of the northwest and southeast portion of the proposed golf course to PR, and the PR designation in the southeast portion of the golf course to L2. And case 5.0932B, application by the Agua Caliente Development Authority for an amendment to specific plan number 1 by revising figure 7 of section E to remove golf as a land use in parcels 10, 11, and 15, and remove the residential land use from parcel number 1. And case 5.0932C, application by Agua Caliente Development Authority for preliminary and final plan development District 280 and preliminary and final grading plan for the redesign and reconstruction of the existing Canyon South Golf Course on 152 acres located south of Murray Canyon Drive, east of South Palm Canyon Drive, north of Bogart Trail, and west of the Palm Canyon Wash. That's Zone W, WR1B, and SP1, Section 35.
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I believe some commissioners may have abstentions. They need to state those abstentions.
I need to abstain because of the proximity to the project, to my principal residence.
Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain because, at least indirectly, Palm Canyon LLC is a client of our office, and even though the conflict is not one that's clear, I think that it would be advisable for me to abstain to avoid any doubt in the matter.
Anybody else?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Rance?
I need to abstain on this item due to the fact that we have a family business that does business with the Agua Caliente Authority.
Then for the record, we have 3 people who have declared that they need to abstain because of conflict of interest. We have 3 disinterested commissioners present, and we've been advised that Mr. Matthews, had he been here, would also have to make an abstention because of a conflict of interest. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I guess we need to draw straws then to see who the additional participating commissioner will be for the purpose of a quorum and participation.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. The procedure that we're asked to operate under is whenever there's a conflict situation like this, where the conflicts do not allow a quorum, what we're required to do is have the commissioners that have a conflict draw by lot and determine who sits for purposes of the quorum. Prior to completion of the staff report, or just after the completion of the staff report, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask for a break. I'd like to confer with the city attorney on one item. and then proceed with the actual public hearing. With regards to the lots, we have 3 pieces of paper that are put in the cup. One says you do participate. That person obviously is the member that will sit, and then the other ones say you do not participate. And so as I come around, if you could draw one slip of paper, if by chance you pull 2 out without opening, drop them both back in.
Thank you.
Someone that does not, they're done.
Yeah. Right, we'll formally excuse you. For the record, we are clearly past 2 o'clock as we proceed at this time.
Oh, I get stuck with the last one. Oh, I get to pick?
They're sealing your fate.
Open them up, make sure I didn't make a mistake.
I do not.
Do not.
Very well, then Ms. Morantz will participate, and Mr. Schoenberger and Mr. Caffrey. Since this is the only item on the agenda, you are excused from the balance of the meeting. Thanks for appearing. And back to you, Mr. Evans, please, for staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is an item that we've given the commission a very lengthy staff report. You've got a lot of materials on this particular project, and I'd like to go through a little bit of the project history and the overall project and show you the context relative to setting. We also have with us today the development team for the Agua Caliente Development Authority, so if you have any questions that are specific to the project design, those individuals are here. Staff will certainly try to answer as many questions as we can when we get to that portion of the project. Could you hold 1 second? The items before you really have 4 components. The first component is we put together an environmental assessment initial study. We're recommending that the commission file a mitigated negative declaration with regards to this, and I'll go through the specifics of that particular document and some of the issues in a moment. The general plan amendment is a proposed general plan amendment that deals with the existing general plan, which is up on the overhead. The areas of concern have to do, and Jing will point them out as we go. We're recommending that we remove the area along Murray Canyon that is low 2, that area through there. On the east side of the project, the area designated as low 2, L2, that is north of a line that Jing's going to show, that we eliminate that and make that public recreation. And then the area roughly south of that northerly projection over low 2, that would all be low 2, and then also over off of Bogert Trail, a little piece of public recreation. If Jing, you could go to the next slide, we'll show you the proposed general plan amendment. As I indicated, the low 2 area has been eliminated on the north along Murray Canyon. The line between the low 2 and the public recreation on the east has been drawn east-west, and then we designated a small area which is currently 1 golf hole south of Bogert Trail as public recreation. The amendment to the specific plan is fairly straightforward. The primary document in the specific plan relative to land use was referred to as figure 19 in the specific plan. It's called the specific plan area map, and it shows the various areas and the types of land uses that were contemplated in those areas. Planning area number 1, which is the area shown bounded in purple, that area had a range of land uses that included residential and golf. Up to 239 residential units could go in that area. And basically, the proposal before you today is to have that area have golf. And clearly, the intended land use in that area was a combination of golf and residential. And what we're proposing in the next slide is a minor adjustment to show you where the golf and the residential would be located. This is an exhibit that was referred to as the conceptual development plan for land use. This was the plan that was put together by Canyon Development as part of the overall specific plan. And as I've previously noted, on the right side, there's a residential component, and it has that northerly projection. We're basically saying eliminate that and keep all the golf north of that east-west line and all the residential south of that east-west line. And, that's the primary change there. We've had discussions with regards to the amendment to the specific plan. I think the guiding document was the figure 19, which is the specific plan planning area map that allocates the land use. And the conceptual development plan was the conceptual plan done by Canyon Development, not necessarily the only project or only way to implement the general plan and specific plan. The next exhibit is the amendments that we're proposing. Again, all of the area that is proposed for the golf course would be designated for golf, including the area south of Bogert Trail, and then also the area on the east where we now see probably a need for all residential. That area would be designated for residential. Again, residential and golf are the only two land uses called out in this particular planning area, and that's what's being proposed. They're just in a little bit different location. Which exhibit do you have next, Gene? Okay. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to shift away from the various exhibits. This is basically an ownership pattern, and that was part of the original specific plan. Area 1 was leasehold interest. Area 3 was an area that had some limited golf expansion. Area 10 and 11 is owned. That area is currently owned by Palm Canyon LLC, and there's a little bit of a sliver that is a component of Area 3 that's Palm Canyon LLC today, with pending agreement to have the tribe or the Agua Caliente Development Authority pick up a portion of that. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to start with the general plan and specific plan amendments so that you could take a look at those. The general plan amendment that we're recommending is a relatively minor one relative to moving existing land uses in this area into different locations. And the net result, we believe, is going to be a substantial reduction in residential density in this area as opposed to an increase. And I'll give you the numbers as I move through the report. The specific plan amendment is really an adjustment. It's not a significant change from the standpoint of reallocating where the golf is versus where the residential will be. The primary reason for that reallocation is the golf course area is predominantly leasehold interest land. The current lease terms require that the golf course be on the leasehold interest land, so it runs with those property owners. There's a sliver of land on the east side of the wash, which I'll point out when I go to the exhibits, that's fee land, and that area would be a very minor expansion area. So if you take a look at this amendment to the specific plan, it's really one figure in the specific plan showing where development may occur in the future, and we think it reflects the current situation relative to ownership and is certainly in keeping with the spirit of the specific plan and the primary land uses called out. The history on the specific plan, it was approved back in 1991. It was subsequently amended in 1994. In 1991, we completed a full environmental impact report, and in 1994, we looked at the amendments. We did an environmental assessment it was determined that no new significant impacts were created and a negative declaration was issued. Nobody contested that action at that time, and we believe that the changes before you today are really relatively minor, and they're certainly very consistent with the intent of the original specific plan and the amended specific plan. The specific plan area covers 746 acres, of which this application before you covers 152 acres. The specific plan intended to have up to 900 residential units, 400 hotel rooms, related commercial and health facilities, an 18-hole golf course, clubhouse, and some additional recreation amenities. The implementation tool for the specific plan was clearly by plan development district because we could not predict exactly what the ownership's patterns might be, and we knew that there might be some adjustments in land use as they went through the final design stages. A key component of the first plan, and you'll probably hear about this during the public hearing, was Canyon Development was a single development entity. They were contemplating doing a majority of the specific plan as one project with various phases, and it's staff's belief that if you take a look at the components of the proposal before you today and the components proposed by others, we're basically implementing the general plan, specific plan, with some minor adjustments. The golf course is primarily a reconstruction of the existing golf course. There are 7 acres that's part of an expansion. That's in the Palm Canyon Wash area. So it's a relatively minor commitment of new undeveloped land for the overall project. That expansion area was clearly part of the 1994 specific plan and the 1991 proposal as it was amended in 1994. So the minor expansion of the golf course is 7 acres, and I'll point out how some, if you take a look at what's actually being added as new versus what's being reclaimed, the actual impact to the Palm Canyon Wash is less than the total amount that I've referred to. In taking a look at the key issue in the particular project, other than the components of a new golf course, with a minor expansion, is the fact that this area is within a 100-year floodplain. It does have a Riverside County flood control easement across it, and what the city has done is we have opted, with the developer's consent, to use Riverside County Flood Control as the entity to review the grading plan. We're currently assisting the Development Authority in their review with Riverside County Flood Control. The city engineer has been on the phone with the chief engineer of Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, and they are moving along very positively relative to their plan checking of that particular plan. The project does require, as you get to the east side, some consultations with other agencies. There will be an Army Corps of Engineers 404 permit, a California Department of Fish and Game 1603 permit, all likely required, and there's conditions of approval and mitigation measures that before work in those areas commences, that they do need to secure those particular permits. In 1993, the Sierra Club and Andreas Palms and the city entered into a stipulated judgment with regards to the original EIR. That stipulated judgment set up some performance criteria for future development, and one of the things that we've talked to the Agua Caliente Development Authority about is that we believe, as the city, that we're going to make sure all projects comply with the physical design criteria of that stipulated judgment. With regards to this project, it primarily deals with the Palm Canyon Wash area. And as I get into the exhibits, I'll give you some additional information on the stipulated judgment. We prepared a very detailed matrix that's in your written report. I'm not going to go through it, where we looked at each provision of that stipulated judgment. We evaluated the project, and we made a summary statement as to conformity or not. I'm pleased to report we think that all the physical requirements, all what I'd refer to as the mitigation, in that particular document are being complied with by the Development Authority and the property owner to the south, Palm Canyon LLC. The Sierra Club has submitted several letters with regards to that. We don't believe it's the Commission's domain to deal with the interpretation of that agreement relative to successors in interest and some of the fine legal issues. That will be handled by the parties involved. We think the city's obligation under that agreement is to make sure that the mitigation provisions are complied with, and we're very comfortable with the project at this time and how it's designed. One of the things that the Sierra Club has raised in their letters has to do with how this project might be linked to properties on the west side of South Palm Canyon Drive. And what I would like to do is go over that very briefly. The stipulated judgment required the area on the west side of the Section 4 midline, which is a north-south line, on the west side of the half section, that there was an area, approximately 120 acres, that had some restrictions in it. Part of that 120 acres, the city, actually Canyon Development, was to use its best faith efforts to acquire that property under the terms of the agreement. Did not require that they actually acquire it, said use their best faith effort. I think everybody expected that that would occur. The property owner, a few years ago, and you've got the deeds and all the background in your staff report, donated 100 acres of the 120 to the city. The area dedicated to the city is the area shown in green. The remaining area, which is outlined in blue, is a 20-acre site. Roughly 7 acres of that site was allowed to have residential development. The city, we believe, we've already acquired 85% of the restricted area. That's better than a good faith effort. That's delivery. We believe that as we look at development on the west side of South Palm Canyon Drive, and we've made it very clear to the property owners on the west side of South Palm Canyon Drive, that we intend to make sure that this stipulated judgment and the terms are complied with by the city, and we believe that we'll be very successful in the long run in being able to acquire all of the property that's outlined in the judgment, and with some help, we might be able to acquire a little bit more. The Sierra Club is concerned that the critical habitat line for peninsular bighorn sheep is further to the east or closer to South Palm Canyon Drive. A larger area should be reserved for open space, but clearly under the stipulated judgment, we've acquired 100 of 120 acres. We're certainly making a good faith effort, and it's our intent to continue that into the future. From the standpoint of the environmental assessment and the issues, the city, again, did a certified EIR in 1991. In 1994, the city adopted a mitigated negative declaration when we amended the specific plan. Both of those documents addressed bighorn sheep. Both of those documents recommended sheep mitigation, and we believe that the information in those documents adequately addressed bighorn sheep. In this particular environmental assessment, we augmented that information, we updated that information, and we don't think the conclusions were much different than they were in 1994 and 1991. Bighorn sheep use the periphery of the Palm Canyon area. We believe, and we'll show you some exhibits, that they do not use the canyon floor. And if they do, it's on a very, very infrequent basis, and it's probably a very dangerous movement for the sheep to come through an area that's predominantly developed. We believe that that issue was clearly brought up as we looked at the original project. In fact, there was discussion about some fencing on the west side of Palm Canyon to keep the sheep from going through what would be a corridor of concern. We've put in mitigation measures relative to bighorn sheep, that when and if there's a problem with sheep coming down onto the golf course, a fence would go up. I haven't talked to a property owner in town that is near bighorn sheep habitat that wouldn't want to put the fence up if bighorn sheep came on their property on a regular basis or even an infrequent basis, because they don't want endangered species on their property. Two, they're large animals and they can be dangerous. Not to mention that mixing humans and development in sheep is probably not the best situation. We don't believe that there's a lot of information that this area is actively used by sheep, and the fact that they're seen occasionally in the hillsides doesn't mean that it's an active, regular corridor. In fact, the Fish and Wildlife Service, when they looked at designating critical habitat and putting together all of their planning documents relative to bighorn sheep, they did not designate this as a corridor. In fact, the edges of the project on the east side, the Palm Canyon Wash, just barely touch the project. And in our meetings with Fish and Wildlife Service, they indicated that that was primarily a cartographic problem with how they had to map in a sawtooth edge, because they could not, under this type of mapping program, have a line that was curvilinear. They've indicated to us in meetings that the actual critical habitat line is the wash area and really the toe of slope. And as of this date, Fish and Wildlife Service has not responded to the environmental documents we have sent to them, but we have briefed them. We've briefed them with tribal staff, on several occasions. California Department of Fish and Game submitted a letter. They concur with the mitigation measures recommended, that when and if there's a problem, we put a fence up. We again conferred with California Department of Fish and Game. They were at the same meeting that Fish and Wildlife Service was at when we discussed this issue, and when we talk to both of those agencies, they tell us that if one takes a position, the other agency takes a similar position, that they do not work against one another, they work in concert with one another. But at this point, Cal Fish and Game seems to be comfortable with the project. Fish and Wildlife Service has not submitted a response. Sierra Club in the environmental assessment raised issues regarding two other species. One is the burrowing owl. The burrowing owl is a species that may or may not be on the site at any particular time. It may not be there at all. And what's required to do there is within 30 days of start of construction, you have to do a survey to see if they're there. That survey has been conducted. They are not on site. And then within, I believe it's 24 hours of start of construction, another survey has to occur before the grading and development can occur. So we believe we're taking care of the burrowing owl and that there should not be an issue there. Casey's June beetle, we gave you a lot of information on it. You received a letter in response to comments from Terra Nova and the project biologist. It's our belief that there is not a significant impact after mitigation relative to this species, that the majority of the habitat, if not almost all of the habitat for this species, is either east of this property or northeast of this property. This is a species that has a very short life cycle. When it's out of the ground, it's very hard to research. And where it's found, when you do a survey, may be an indication of where the lights are, because they're found by using lights, and the Casey's June beetle will fly very quickly towards a light and may cover a fair amount of distance. And while you might find them on site, it's probably, in talking to the biologist, it may very well have to do with the fact that they were attracted to the light. Mitigation has been recommended. It's in your packet relative to Casey's June beetle, and we believe that the impacts to the June beetle are fully mitigated under the environmental assessment that we put forward. We also received a letter for Riverside County Flood Control relative to the environmental issues and permitting issues with other agencies. And as I've indicated, the Agua Caliente Development Authority is working with Riverside County Flood Control through the plan check process right now. All of the permits that were outlined in their report are either required by condition of approval of the engineering division, or under mitigation measures. We made some very minor wording adjustments to make Riverside County Flood Control comfortable. And you do have those responses to comments. The letter came in fairly late, and we handed that information out at the beginning of the meeting, and you do have written responses there. Mr. Chairman, that is an overview of kind of the administrative record. I'd like to walk through the plans and some of the exhibits that show some of the environmental relationships I've discussed.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, as I've indicated, the project is really a fairly straightforward development project. The entire golf course up to approximately this line is currently developed as a golf course. They're going to come in, reroute the golf course, redesign it, put in new tees, greens, lakes, and amenities, but all but about 7 acres are existing golf course. There's a 291-foot area over here, and I'll show you on another exhibit, that's undeveloped. And then there's another portion of the golf course that's existing here that will be removed and the area renaturalized. So if you renaturalize this area, develop this area, the net new disturbed area at the end of the day after renaturalization is 4 acres in the Palm Canyon Wash. The golf course will utilize the existing clubhouse. They're not going to redo that at this time. The golf course will route out in returning nines so that it plays very well from a playing standpoint, and it has a series of new lakes that would be in the golf course, as well as some areas of arid and desert region landscape in the golf course. Relative to project perimeters, the Murray Canyon perimeter of the project, which is a very long stretch, would have a design that would be similar to this, with the flood control facility located here. At the lower base adjacent to the roadway, there would be an equestrian trail and a fence, and then they would come in and landscape that area. At this point, they're proposing to do that primarily with a hydroseed mixture for the ground level plants, and then bringing in some tree forms that are desert tree forms. There was some debate at design review about the hydroseeding versus actually installing plants and then having individual irrigation systems to it. The project landscape architect is here. We believe that's something that we can work out at staff level and the final landscape plan and make that work. We've had some concern in the past relative to the hydroseeding, the weed growth and the overhead irrigation. The landscape architect has got some very successful projects I think he'll talk to you about in the Coachella Valley. The next area or perimeter is South Palm Canyon Drive and Bogert Trail. One of the issues that we discussed at design review was, will this landscape program tie into the overall development program, which really will start eventually at Murray Canyon, go down to Bogert Trail, go from Bogert Trail to Acanto, and eventually transition into the Indian Canyons Heritage Park, the tribal community building, as well as a future museum by the tribe. We've taken a look at the plant materials proposed in here and the plant materials proposed in the project that's been approved to the south. They're very similar. Both landscape architects will work together to make sure that we have a consistent theme. There may be some subtle differences, but I think to the driver by, you're not going to see much difference. Most people would see it as a very similar situation. Because of the need to get these golf holes up fairly close to get the distance on this hole, they're going to come in and do some screening landscape around that area so that as you're on the tees in that area, you've got a little bit of protection, but they really need to have that proximity to get the yardage on this particular hole. One of the other issues that may or may not come up today during the hearing is the edge conditions around the existing homes on Bogert Trail. Again, you've got the existing golf hole south of Bogert Trail. They're going to shorten it up. It currently plays as a short par 4, except for maybe somebody like Mr. Grintz. He might be able to call it a par 3. But that particular golf hole will be shortened up and actually make it a little bit better to play because it's a fairly narrow area. But taking a look at the edge conditions around there, grading wise, they're going to grade right up and match up to existing fence lines and yard lines, and they're probably going to open up the views and certainly make a great amenity with a revised golf course next to those homes. On the Palm Canyon Wash side, there's an area of the landscape plan that is more of a renaturalization on the edges as it transitions from golf into the natural floodplain. That area will be staked so that there's no overlapping, and they're going to be very precise in how they develop that side to make sure that they meet all the terms and conditions that we've imposed upon the project. And then there will be a renaturalization of any disturbed areas over there, and we're going to work with the project biologist and landscape team to make sure that the restoration program puts the right materials in and that we don't have to over irrigate and cause other secondary problems. I'm going to give you a very detailed overview of the grading plan. The golf course grading plan is the only final development plan that, if you're comfortable with the project, that we're going to ask you to approve today. Basically, what that would do is allow the project to proceed with the grading as we resolve the landscaping issues and really fine-tune the landscape plan relative to the golf course. This grading plan, again, is being reviewed by County Flood Control to make sure that the hydraulic capacity of the wash is worked out. Just so you know, there'll be some minor adjustments up at Acanto and Bogert Trail. There's a fair amount of water that will come on the site there. They're going to spread this out a little bit so the water comes through. And as you know, eventually we're going to try to build a bridge right there. We want to make sure that the water, the bridge, and the golf all match up, and that's being worked on right now. If you'd like to see a detail of that potential revision, I passed it up on the previous exhibit. Again, the only other part I'd like to call out is roughly the 291 feet. In this area, it's one golf hole. And that area, would be handled very carefully and per all the terms of the stipulated judgment. There's some existing golf that's out in the wash that's in this area. All of that will be moved out, and if you've played the golf course, that's the area that sits way above the wash. It's the narrow point of the wash, and the idea there is to take those golf improvements out, take the fill out, widen the wash out to its natural width, roughly 300 feet, and that's been the minimum width established relative to making this hydraulically work, as well as deal with the Sierra Club concerns relative to the Palm Canyon Wash, relative to disturbance, as well as hiking trails and access. I'd like to talk a little bit about environmental resources and ownership of land. I went through that in the staff report. You have most of this material, and I just would like to go through it so that you can see the exact exhibits and how they actually work with the project. This particular exhibit is the critical habitat boundary for the peninsular bighorn sheep. As you can see, all through this area, it's a jagged sawtooth effect. And in some cases, they show critical habitat going north of East Palm Canyon Drive into condominium complexes. We don't think that that was their intention. It was a cartographic issue. We met with Fish and Wildlife Service regarding this map, and they have told us that the intent in these areas of Sawtooth around the northern Santa Rosas is its toe of slope. And as you get back down into this area, again, it's the Palm Canyon Wash and toe of slope area. And the 291 feet is right in there, and you're right on the edge. The overlap is very, very slight, and if cartographically they could have carved that line around, it's our belief, and what they've told us, that line would have missed the proposed project. Had there been an identified need for a corridor, we believe it should have been designated critical habitat. They did not designate a corridor here. It's not discussed in the document. The corridor, as we believe, and certainly the safer corridor, is to come around to the south where there's lots of unimproved land. The roadway conflicts and human conflicts are much less than you would have with 2- and 4-lane roadways, flood control facilities, as well as a golf course and single-family homes. Yeah. I'd like to switch to a little bit different exhibit, and then I'll come back to that one. The proposed golf course basically lays in this area right here. We've looked at a project in this location. The commission's approved and the council's approved a project in this location. This is South Palm Canyon Drive, the west side, section 34 that I referred to. That gives you an idea how other projects fit in to this. I have a better exhibit. There's a large exhibit that I'll get to in a moment that kind of shows how everything fits very clearly. What I wanted to do with this exhibit is talk a little bit about ownership. There's a concern that the city has not used good faith with regards to acquisition of land. In section 34, which is this section of land, the city negotiated a donation of 100 acres, which is the Gans property. This note should be corrected. That's the property I referred to that constitutes 85% of the lands discussed in this stipulated judgment. The remaining 20 acres is located right there, and as you can see, it's not proposed to be subdivided in that project, and any development that might occur, the city is going to make sure we meet the terms of the stipulated judgment. Sierra Club concern over there, and we think it's for a future project and really doesn't have merit on this project. So the critical habitat line is there. The development line is roughly there. Critical habitat line on this diagram runs right about there. We think that we can deal with that when we deal with that particular project in the future, and the property owner certainly knows that they have to deal with those issues at that time. City also acquired 119 acres in this location. We've acquired 42.5 acres in this location. The balance of these properties in section 34 are Indian land, including these parcels down here. The tribal council has purchased one for tribal trust in that particular location. So that gives you an idea of section 34. Again, the west half, this area, we've done what we think is a pretty good job of acquiring land, and I don't think we're done yet relative to trying to get open space in that area. I mentioned the concern about a corridor, and this is an exhibit that we used for the Acanto Partners project, which is currently being graded, and I'd like to just go over it so you can see how the project fits in. Golf course is located here with 291 feet added on in this area. Got an existing flood control channel, bridge, roadway, existing homes, existing golf course. Sierra Club is going to introduce information that they've seen sheep up in this area and that this is a viable corridor and it's the only one that's in existence. We believe that really the corridor is to the south and that there's a lot of area and a lot of open space that's been put forth and so far as public and tribal acquisitions to deal with the park and the fact that that's probably a corridor if there is a mix that's on a regular basis between the two mountain ranges. Again, when we take a look at this information, and we've sat down with Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game and used this type of diagram, and they have told us they don't think that there's a corridor, and if there was, it's not very safe. So we don't believe that there's a corridor, and we don't believe that that's an issue of great concern. Just to give you an idea, from this site north, between the city and the tribal council, almost all of the San Jacinto Mountains is publicly owned or tribally owned and set aside for either open space or the Tockwitz Canyon by the tribal council. So from Chino Canyon on down to this site, most of that property that touches the toe of slope is already publicly owned. Kind of go back up to how things fit in the area. Again, the existing golf course through here, the area added, the 291 feet, the fact that this Monte Sereno subdivision would eventually match up with the channelization that exists at the Bogert Trail Bridge, come down to the project site. This would be the area that would be renaturalized, turned back into desert wash over time. And then this is the encroachment into the Palm Canyon Wash. If you take a look at that critical habitat boundary, it comes along this line here. So where it affects this project is a little bit here, a little bit here, half of which would be renaturalized or in that area. So really the net change in this area is 4 acres of new disturbance after the reclamation occurs. Again, we believe that if Fish and Wildlife could draw that line where it should be, it would be somewhere up along this line, probably not touch those properties. And again, we've sat down with exhibits just like this with Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game, and we've not seen any objection from them relative to critical habitat and or corridors at today's meeting. One of the issues in the stipulated judgment is how is this channel to be handled? And again, we've had this area surveyed by the project team to make sure their golf course is going to meet the criteria. It will. The Monte Sereno people have prepared this exhibit, and there's a little line of encroachment there. They're pulling back and creating a larger area of non-encroachment or desert wash habitat in that area. So I think when you take a look at the net impact of the Palm Canyon Wash contemplated in 1993 and 94 versus proposed today, there's less impact to the Palm Canyon Wash. Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of background material that we provided you relative to the project. The key issue, again today, is the approval of the golf course as the land use in the area, the preliminary landscape plan for the golf course, and then a final development plan, which would be the actual grading plan for the golf course. The project goes forward. Obviously they've got a fair amount of time of grading before we have to worry about finalizing the landscape plan. And again, we've been working with the landscape architect to resolve what staff believes are relatively minor issues relative to project landscaping. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report, and I do need to take a little bit of a break before we maybe go into commission questions.
Very good. Thank you very much for your thorough report. Let's take a 10-minute recess, and we'll come back and see if there are any commission questions, and then address the public hearing at that time. Thank you. We're back in session. Before we open the public hearing, are there any questions from the commission to staff? Mr. Grinch? No? Okay, then now is the time for the public to speak. We'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to comment on this matter, please come forward, give us your name, and sign the clipboard before you leave.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Nicole Christ. I'm with Terra Nova Planning and Research in Palm Springs. We're located at 400 South Farrell. We represent the Agua Caliente Development Authority for this project. We have several members of our development team who are also here if you have any questions, including our landscape architect, Ron Gregory, our engineer, John Sanborn, and members of the Development Authority. Our firm also prepared the environmental assessment for this project, and I will take a little time when I'm done with my initial comments to comment on the latest letter that was received this afternoon from the Sierra Club, which you do not have written comments on. The first letter, you do have comments in your packet. Doug did a very thorough job with his presentation. The authority wishes, on behalf of the allottees, to improve a golf course which is past its prime. The added territory that we have incorporated into the plan represents an addition of less than 5% of the total acreage. The project exists now and could continue to exist, but not at its optimal potential. And the authority wishes to develop a better product, both for the neighborhood, the residents of the city, and eventually for potential hotel guests. As you know, there is a hotel included in specific plan number 1, and the ultimate development of that area, which is allowed under the stipulated judgment and in the specific plan, would enjoy a very nice public amenity. The staff presentation included several of the environmental issues. I want to point out that we substantially conform with the specific plan as it is currently adopted, that we are not asking for additional land uses or changes in land uses which are outside of the approval that currently stands. We have also worked very hard to conform with the requirements of the stipulated judgment that Doug has referred to that was entered into in 1993. And we do meet those requirements in the reconstruction and expansion effort. The proposed specific plan amendment and general plan amendment, as pointed out in the staff report, will result in 150 fewer homes than currently approved in the specific plan because of the reduction of the L2 designation on the north side of the golf course, the southeast portion of the golf course, and a small portion at the southwest corner of the golf course. That reduction in density is not proposed to be made up elsewhere. It will simply become the public golf course property. The area is substantially the same as the area that was proposed for golf course in the specific plan. As you saw from Doug's exhibits, there are areas where the golf course was in small part to meander into the residential sections, and we have consolidated those into the existing primarily the existing property. If I could turn your attention to the letter from Mr. Brechtel that was received this afternoon, I would like to make some comments for the record. As regards Peninsular Bighorn sheep and the existence of a corridor, Doug has pointed out that the corridor is not a safe one, and that although bighorn may have been identified in the wash area, it is not their preferred terrain, nor is it a designated corridor in the recovery plan, which is the document that was published in the Federal Register and adopted for the recovery of the bighorn sheep, and is the document under which the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service operates for the recovery of the species. We have studied that document extensively, and the corridor is not designated as habitat area as defined by the Sierra Club's comments in their original letter and brought up again here. And ultimately, if a sheep were to use this area to travel, the proposed ACDA project does not substantially change current conditions. We are going to add 7 acres to an area that already is golf. We are going to actually widen the channel slightly at the 13th hole by renaturalizing that area and providing a slightly wider area for the sheep to travel should they choose to use the wash. There is data in your original response to comments regarding the preference of the sheep to use higher terrain. They like to look down on their potential predators rather than being in a hole and not being able to escape from that hole. And that data was taken directly from the recovery plan, so that is good science on the subject of the sheep. As regards the two issues that are brought up in today's letter regarding piecemealing the project and considering other parts of the project, we are developing this project under an existing specific plan that has received extensive environmental review, including a certified EIR and a subsequent mitigated negative declaration. That environmental review has also been under judicial review since the stipulation included the environmental review that was done in 1991. The portion of this project that we are currently considering, the golf course property, fully conforms with the environmental review that was done previously. The sheep may have been listed as endangered after the certification of the EIR, but CEQA requires that any species that is considered sensitive be reviewed at the same level of care as if it were listed as endangered. And the California Department of Fish and Game insists on that level of review. The city's level of review for the sheep in 1991 was therefore at the same level of care that would have been taken for an endangered species had it been listed at the time. The only change, significant change since that time, is the publication of a recovery plan and the designation of critical habitat. The science that was known in 1991 is not substantially different from the science that was incorporated into that recovery plan and that is now part of the official record for that species. It is not required for the city to consider all subsequent projects which come under an existing approval together. It is also not physically possible generally for a jurisdiction to consider all potential projects that come under an approved project together. It would have been, under the original approval, a single developer who might have processed the entire project area as one project. But even a large developer would likely have separated areas of this project into pieces. Simply, practically speaking, it is not physically possible to develop 750 acres in one fell swoop. The requirements for additional environmental review have been addressed in our original response to comments. There is not a substantial change in the proposed ACDA project that you currently have before you. The ACDA is preparing additional materials along with surrounding property owners to do a comprehensive specific plan amendment for the additional properties to lower the density and to relocate the hotel property to the southeast corner of Murray Canyon and South Palm Canyon. None of the proposed projects that you have reviewed previously or the ones that ACDA is considering for the future, increase the densities that are currently proposed and approved in the specific plan, and are likely to lower the intensity of development overall, and that project will be brought to the commission after the first of the year for their comprehensive review, and will also undergo separate environmental review as required by CEQA. The piecemealing argument, therefore, that has been brought up several times is does not, I believe, substantiated in fact. Regarding the critical habitat boundary, Doug has pointed out that it is a cartographic issue and a computer generation issue. The citation number 7 in the original response to comments relates to a meeting that was held with city staff as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service staff, where the boundary for critical habitat in that area was discussed extensively, and the service does not feel that this project lies within critical habitat boundary. We have extensive discussion regarding the Casey's June beetle. The Casey's June beetle is not listed as sensitive or endangered on either state or federal listings. The proposed golf course expansion, or the existing golf course for that matter, was not in the core habitat that was delineated for the species in the Coachella Valley Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan. That core habitat, when the species was being considered for inclusion in the plan, lay entirely within the Smoke Tree Ranch project area and the expansion for the Smoke Tree Ranch project area. When the species is reconsidered for the Coachella Valley Multi-Species Habitat Conservation Plan, the core habitat that will be included will be that same area. We've had discussions most recently with representatives of the plan. There has been no expansion of the area that is to be protected for that species. The additional studies that were performed by Michael Brandman Associates, I'm sure that Doug has a copy, I have a copy. We will be glad to provide them to Sierra Club for their review. The analysis shows that Casey's June beetle occurs north of Highway 111 in wash areas, and that its habitat range may be more extensive than was originally studied. Based on that analysis, we believe that the mitigation measure to locate desert wash habitat potentially in the Whitewater River in Section 6, if we're successful, is an appropriate mitigation which may in fact provide additional habitat for Casey's June beetle. It simply has not been located in that area. We have, in addition, mitigated by returning 3 acres at the southeast corner of what is now the 13th hole to natural wash habitat as part of the reconstruction project, and the reconstruction of that area will fall within the requirements of the stipulated judgment. The commenter also refers to the potential for ACDA to avoid California law somehow. Given the city's procedures with CEQA, the applicant has clearly not avoided California law and will continue to fall under those requirements for the 1603 permit that will be required from the California Department of Fish and Game, as well as securing federal permits from the U.S. Army Corps. It is clear that we require a 404 permit on the 7-acre extension. The U.S. Army Corps will review our application and will determine whether or not additional environmental review is required under their NEPA standards. They will prepare their own environmental document and circulate that as they are required to do. ACDA is not proposing to avoid any of those requirements, and on the contrary, has been quite aware that those requirements are coming and will not disturb any of that area until those permits are secured. And that concludes my comments on the latest letter. As I said, we have several people here who can answer your technical questions. I can answer questions as well, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. There may be some questions after the close of the public hearing. Does anybody else wish to speak? Please come forward at this time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Joan Taylor. I'm representing Sierra Club. We've submitted a letter and more documents to you. I won't go over those. But with regard to the issue of a conflict of interest, for the record, Sierra Club believes that the participation of a commissioner who has a conflict of interest violates the California Political Reform Act and Section 1090 of the Government Code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And back to commissioners, and by way of clarification, I know, Ms. Morantz, you're aware that your participation here is merely for the purpose of establishing a quorum, and you will not be participating in the discussion. Commissioners. Ms. Conrad?
In reading this material, actually, I just, for the record and for the benefit of the public, would like to have Mr. Gregory talk a little bit about his landscape plans, maybe elaborate a little bit on Doug's presentation, and I'm sorry if it wastes time, but I think people probably do want to see what it's going to be, and talk about your plans for drip or no drip, and since those are somewhat controversial. Start with that. It's simple, huh?
Doug.
Mr. Gregory, as you begin your comments, I ask that you use the microphone, and please introduce yourself for the record and your assistant as well.
Thank you. My name is Ron Gregory. I'm one of the partners of Pinnacle Design Company, the landscape architects working on this project. I can address many of the issues. As far as specifics, however, will be much better served by Doug Enroth, one of our principals with the firm, who has much more of the technical knowledge of the design in this project. I would like to say that in a specific response to the concern expressed about the hydroseeded material, especially, for example, on the berm area of the dike, as opposed to hand-planted material with drip irrigation, we feel that this is a much more effective way in this particular situation to work. We have had extremely good experience in other golf courses working with hydroseeded ground cover. We have some photographs, which I believe I gave Doug, and we have some other copies here, of how a hydroseeded situation can be maintained to be very attractive over a long term. It's not like a free lunch. You can't hydroseed an area and not maintain it. It has to be maintained sufficiently so that over time it remains a viable material to hold back slope for erosion and also look attractive. The concern was also expressed about this type of landscape relative to views from the parkway, and also how it transitions with the adjoining project where the material will be hand-planted. I think it's important to explain that in the area that we're hydroseeding, we will have hand-planted material as well. It will supplement the hydroseeded material. So as we get closer to the adjoining project, we will move more and more to hand-planted material so that there will be a very smooth transition between the two projects. Also, the other project is using a large amount of boulders. We will do the same thing. so that, as Doug was concerned about earlier, the selection of materials that we use will be very similar to that of the adjacent project, so that while the, let's say, the style hopefully is somewhat different, because I think it's good to have diversity, the thematic quality will continue in the sense of the same types of material being used. That's boulders as well as trees, shrubs, and ground cover. And another important thing, I believe, is that the landscape approach on the revised golf course will use less turf than the prior golf course. So this is another means that we as landscape architects are using to minimize dependence on water. So the areas which will be in non-play areas on the golf course will be materials other than turf to make it more attractive and, of course, to lessen the amount of water being used. At this point, I'd like to hand the microphone over to Doug Enroth, who will explain some of the use of materials we've used and I guess some of the technicalities. Thanks, Doug.
Good afternoon. My name again is Douglas Enroth. I'm a principal at Pinnacle Design. The only areas we're showing right now for the hydroseeded slope is the large slope, which is adjacent to Murray Canyon Road. And we also did a detailed section showing how that treatment would occur. Anything along South Palm Canyon, Bogart Trail, and in the interior areas where there's what we call non-play, all those areas are going to be drip irrigated, and they have a very similar treatment to what's being illustrated here under D, where there'll be hand-spotted shrubs and trees, all drip irrigated, and it comes off the golf course. The maintenance of the non-play areas as well as the hydroseeded areas will be done by the superintendent. One of the benefits we have had over the last several years, having done several projects with both drip and overhead spray with hydroseed, we have come up with a schedule, a maintenance schedule that we feel as we go along further doing this stuff and refining it, we've become quite successful at it. And that's by us having a regular dialogue with the different superintendents and what they've found successful, unsuccessful. And we feel as though with proper maintenance practices and discussing how to handle the areas with the superintendent here, we feel it'll be successful and certainly be much prettier than what is existing right now, which is a chain link fence and just a big unkept slope, so to speak. So as for the tree material, it's all, for the most part, desert plant material, tree material, with a few added like olive trees, etc. Some of that have been existing on site that we're actually salvaging and transplanting, and that will be all done under our supervision. But other than that, we feel as though this is going to turn out to be a beautiful project for Canyon South. One other thing I'd like to add, though, is in the desert areas where they have the hand-planted shrubs, we're also going to throw down a desert wildflower hand broadcast seed mix. And that won't get regular overhead watering. What that will get is supplemental watering like we're having today, by God, and wet germinate comes up. And we've had a lot of success with that. We've done it out at Tradition, where we've gone into a big slope and filled tees into the sides of slopes and re-rocky sloped it and put a hand broadcast seed mix. And it's just over time, just over the years, it's just looks amazing. You would never know that that was a fill slope by the time we were done with it. So if there's any questions.
Does that satisfy your inquiry?
I'd like to continue along those lines. How long does the renaturalization of the wash take, and could you discuss that a little bit further? And I guess I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask this question too, but why is the golf course, the 7 acres expansion necessary? Can somebody explain the rationale behind that? Is it just, I mean, why can't the course be tweaked to stay inside where it was, and why did it get designed the way it is?
I think the challenge that we faced in 1991 as well as 1994, if the golf course architects had their way, the golf course would be expanded even further to the northeast. And Jing, if you could put the original specific plan exhibit up. The yardage that's necessary to have a resort or championship golf course necessitates an expansion to really have a quality golf course. To have a quality golf course means you can compete, and there's just, could they do it? Yeah, they could tighten this up and make a Mesquite Country Club out of it, and it would not be a resort golf course that you would find with eventually a resort hotel of the caliber they're proposing. If you take a look at the area in the upper right-hand part of that exhibit, the area zoned as, or shown as O, originally that was all golf course expansion. What they did was they came back to roughly the purple line and then went back to the right or the east 291 feet, and that was agreed upon by the Sierra Club as an expansion area. When I first met with the Agua Caliente Development Authority back in probably prior to June of this year, they clearly had on their plate the idea of what would it take to be able to expand the golf course up into that area, and we went through kind of the history and the environmental concerns, and they came back and worked within the 291 feet. So it's quality of golf, purely driven. You could make a golf course fit, but it would not be the type of golf course you'd like to see with a future hotel.
So renaturalization.
Ms. Conrad, if I could address the renaturalization, we'll work with the project biologist on whether that involves actually planting native plants, or depending on the winter we're having in the spring, whether grading it and leaving it to Mother Nature is the most appropriate method. That it has been shown in this desert that leaving it to Mother Nature takes very little time for it to reintegrate into the wash.
Okay. I think that the decrease in total overall residential density is a plus, and I was heartened to hear it said that that was not going to be proposed to be made up anywhere else, and I guess I just want to reiterate that. Do you have a firmer time schedule for when we might see the hotel and the rest of the amenities that go with this?
Excuse me if I might interrupt. Before the landscape architects leave the podium, I had a follow-up question that maybe you can answer, and then we'll go back to you, Ms. Conrad, for the follow-up questions. Mr. Enross or Mr. Gregory, the southwest corner where as Mr. Evans has described, the holes are going to be moved pretty close to the street. You've kind of have a plan there for beefing up the landscape buffer. I wonder if you could describe that and give us an idea how that'll appear from the street side.
Well, what we're going to do here is twofold. Number one is we want to screen the tee from people below. That would be on either Brogite Trail or South Palm Canyon. But what we want to do also is provide view corridors. As you're traveling in a car, would be north on South Palm Canyon Road. You'll have view corridors into the golf course, but it won't be like a 180-degree view. What we want to do is make sure that if somebody's playing on that golf hole, if they have a tendency to slice the ball, is that we can actually protect and knock the ball down before it even gets to the road. And all the plant material that we're showing, and all. Oh my gosh, you're right. And I play golf, isn't that sad? Well, I work for a guy that's left-handed, so that's a slice to him. So that area is gonna, and all the plant material rather, that's going along that edge is very similar to what is the project just south on Bogart Trail. I have a copy of that plan, and the material is going to be consistent along with the boulder treatment, etc.
Well, how high? What type of plant material are you using, and how high is it going to be? Are you putting up tall trees, or you?
There's a mixture of trees, mesquites that are going to go along there. Also, we have for taller shrubs, we have cassias and creosotes, and then some more of our accent shrubs would be like our encelias, We also have some dahlia or black dahlia that's going to go in there, and we'll hand spot it to where certain areas where we feel as though the ball will actually leave the area, we'll tend to put the taller material there.
And how
And then-
tall are the taller materials?
Well, the mesquites, they get 25 by 25. And I've seen creosotes that have been supplemental watered. They'll get 8 by 8 or bigger. So, and then the cassias, they're 7 by 7, 8 by 8 by the time.
Okay, Mr. Grinch?
Just going back to the hydro seeding, what I saw in the picture looked like gazania and probably lantana or verbena or something. Well, what are you proposing without going into the whole plant palette for that?
It would be predominantly gazania. You will get verbena that'll come up that'll reseed. Encelia is a very successful plant that we've used. We'll supplement in with the grasses like your deer grasses or your dwarf pampas grass, which is actually a sterilized version of it. Some bladder pop you'll see come up too, which from a distance looks very similar to gazania.
Okay. I think you answered part of the question too. I saw ornamental grasses, so you're talking about, there's a big issue here in town with people using fountain grasses for the color and lots of texture, looks great, and it reseeds everywhere. You can go downstream, downwind, and
Yeah.
it's growing everywhere in the
Yeah, these are
valley.
deer grasses. They
Okay.
they will not reseed themselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions of the architects before we allow them to go back? Thanks, we appreciate it. And back to you, Ms. Conrad, if you want to follow through with your
I'm having
rest of your
a
comments.
great time. So is there any, and I hesitate to even ask, but is there any firmer timeline about when we might see the hotel and the rest of the amenities associated with this?
We're working on drafting the specific plan amendment now. We're hoping to have it to the city in the next 10 days, and then we'll review it with the city and see, with city staff and work with them from there to bring it to hearing.
So relatively quickly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess the last question I have is, would Doug have any objection, or staff or applicant have any objection to, under the conditions of approval, number 12, pulling the lighting plan back to design review and the planning commission rather than leaving it at a staff level?
That's within your prerogative. The golf course doesn't have any real proposed lighting. The clubhouse area, they're going to try to keep it as is for a while, but we could certainly bring that back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grinch, any comments, questions?
Well, probably just to echo about the reduced density. I'm glad to see that. Less houses on the footprint of the course and stuff. That's a plus.
I'd just like to comment, most of the issues, I don't know if critical is the right word, but maybe that is the right word, that have been raised from the public have come from the Sierra Club, and we had a very extensive written report, including supporting documentation, and the issue of the enforcement or the applicability of the stipulated judgment has been addressed by our city attorney, and to the extent of commenting that the city's is fulfilling its roles under that stipulated judgment to the extent that they exist, and doing its best to assure that all other parties, whether they are technically bound by the terms of the settlement agreement, that they will follow the terms of the settlement agreement. Separate and apart from that issue raised by the Sierra Club are the environmental issues, whether or not they're precluded from litigating it. I think we have a duty to examine all the environmental issues, and after full review, including the comments from Ms. Chris Firm in response to those raised, I feel persuaded that there is nothing new that's significant or that requires us to approach the environmental issues different than those different from the manner that were done in the past, and I'd be prepared to adopt a negative declaration and the other make the other findings as suggested by staff. My general comment. So if there's anything further, or is there a motion?
I guess I'll make one other comment. I'm not sure that the criticism that's been levied about piecemealing the project is without merit. I don't know how you would go about looking at this not in a piecemeal fashion, but not unsympathetic to the fact that we are taking it in pieces. But this piece doesn't bother me as much as others, as it substantially already exists. So with that, I guess I'll move case number 5.0932A, application by the Agua Caliente Development Authority for a general plan amendment. Do I have to say it all, Doug?
I think you need to reference the specific plan amendment because that's a separate resolution, and the Plan Development District, which is a separate resolution.
Okay. And case 5.0932B, application by the Agua Caliente Development Authority for amendment to the specific plan number 1. And case number 5.0932C, application by the Agua Caliente Development Authority for a preliminary and final plan development district 280 and a preliminary and final grading plan for the redesign and reconstruction of the existing Canyon South Golf Course.
And would that be to recommend the filing of a negative declaration and including all of the other findings and conditions of approval as in the staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, it would.
I'll second that.
Okay, that's motion by Ms. Conrad, second by Mr. Granch. If there's nothing further, then roll call vote, please, Michelle.
Ms. Conrad?
Aye.
And you, good.
Call
Ms.
her name.
Morantz?
Abstain.
Mr. Grinch? Mr. Klatchko?
Aye. Motion carries 3-0 with one abstention.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a comment. The development team worked very hard in a very short period of time, and they responded to a tremendous amount of requests on our part for information, and we'd like to thank their entire team. I'd also like to acknowledge Jing Yu. She's a fairly new associate planner for the city. Jing worked well into the evenings for the past 3 or 4 weeks when needed on this project, and I think she's a seasoned planner now. She now knows what happens when you deal with a complex project, even though it's pretty simple, but a lot of issues and a lot of input. And I thank her for all the work that she's done for me.
And the commission joins in that recognition. I know that your very good report was made possible in part by the assistance that she provided you as well. So thank you. If there's nothing further then, any further comments by commissioners? The meeting adjourned then. Thank you.